This is an unusual webinar, Clayton. There's no format, no nothing. We're just gonna kind of freestyle here for an hour. So if you want to stick around, by all means. All right, we got the YouTube live going. I'm gonna copy the link over there. I'm gonna share it up, and then we're gonna get going. So just give me a quick second. And then, like I said, we're going to kind of open up the floor to questions. We're going to talk about conferences. We're going to talk about some lessons from Gary Vaynerchuk, and we're going to talk about well, some of the things that I've picked up reading these books these past weeks or months, I guess, and the actions taken. I do like to sort of check in and I'll make sure that you guys know that I'm not just talking shit. I'm actually taking the stuff and applying it, and my hope is that I can then well, share some of the results and whatnot. So just give me a quick second. Almost done. Fortunately, this is not stuff I can do in advance. I have to kind of have to do it when it's live. So forgive me for that. We'll get going ASAP. All right. Almost there. No forgiveness. I don't know why that reminds me of Batman somehow. You know, when he's like, oh, what is it? I think he's like upside down or something, and he's got a baddie, and he's like, what does he say? He's like, I can't remember. Swear to me. Yeah, he says something like that. I don't know why that reminds me of that, but pretty epic. All right. So I've shared it. I've shared it here. Aces. Good to go. Alrighty. So one of the things I like to kind of preach, I like to get up on my soapbox and preach is reading books. I talk about it a lot, and obviously I get on this show and I talk about it some more. We read books and all that kind of stuff. I think the last one we did was Rework, which was freaking awesome book. I absolutely adored it. And one thing that I make practice of, I suppose, is asking people that I know, people that I respect, people ideally that have the professional and personal life that I seek or that I aspire to. So perhaps they've gone on to do 100 million and then sell, or they've gone on to do 100 million and they're still growing, or perhaps they have sort of the work-life balance that I aim to achieve, or I don't know, all kinds of things, right? What's up, John? And so I like to find those people and ask them about the books that they've read, about the books that have made an impact in their life professionally or personally. And I usually like to, because that can be pretty broad, right? So I usually like to lead with, this is my situation. I ask myself these three questions. Let's see if I can find them. Sorry, this is totally off the cuff. So I don't, cool. So I have these three things written down. So I usually approach the conversation with these three things, and that will give them some context enough to provide me with some good suggestions. First question is, how do you want your business to look like in a year? And to have a really clear picture is important. I don't want to ramble on. Next one is, how is it right now? So how are things working and how are things not working right now? And what obstacles, so this third question, what obstacles, what's up, Serge? What obstacles are holding me back? And what plans do I have, or what plan, appreciate the love, Serge, what plan do I have so far to try and solve those obstacles, to overcome those obstacles? And so that gives them at least sort of the basis. Hey, Julie, the basis for conversation, the basis for some suggestions. And so I'll, quickly, write down their suggestions. I did this the other day. Damn it, my phone is obviously on, so I don't have, but actually a lot of these books came from that, like Multipliers, that came from Matt Doyle. He recommended that one to me. Blue Ocean Strategy, that was also Matt. Rework with somebody else. Once Upon a Time 4-Hour Work Week with somebody else. Someone recommended that to me, and I've read that like 3-4 times since. So it's these are all books that made a huge impact. And the beautiful thing about asking these people that you respect, these people who have reached perhaps the heights that you'd like to reach, is they've waded through the crappy books already. That means you don't have to read a bunch of shitty books before you find the right one, which can be. I just started. Like, this episode was supposed to be a book episode where I read to you guys. I found, and I was reading something called Ego is the Enemy. I don't think I have it on me right now. Nope, I think it's downstairs. In any event, I was supposed to read that tonight, and I got about 30 pages in and I fucking hated it. And it was actually recommended to me, but it just wasn't enjoyable. And so I just put it down. And I think that's important. I think one, it's good. And I think this sort of strategy, asking people you respect what made an impact for them. I think that's helpful because one, it helps you pick up a book that's of good quality. And two, it helps you pick up a book that you can apply right now. So you've given them some context, so they'll hopefully suggest a book that is applicable now, something that you can apply now. And so that Ego is the Enemy, for example, it had a lot of interesting teachings, but I just didn't feel like there was anything I needed right now from that book. There wasn't anything I could take from it this moment and apply tomorrow. And so that's kind of a hang up for me. So very quickly, I wanted to, the idea of today is not for me to constantly talk. I would be very stoked, and you can do this before or after. I'll come back to this video later on tonight or tomorrow or whatever. But if anybody has any marketing or business questions, I'd be stoked to answer those. I don't know whether they'll have a good answer or not, but happy to share my experience anyway. So feel free to just leave a comment or whatever, and I will get to it, whether doing it live or I might go away and answer it later on once I have. Well, I learned that from you, Clayton. People should be asking you. I learned that from you, Clayton. You, Dax, and what the fuck was his name? Alex? It was you, Dax, and Alex, right? Is that true? I think it was Alex. I can't remember. Something like that. Yeah, I quite honestly, I learned it from you guys. I saw you guys hustling on wickedfire.com those many, many years ago, and it was. You guys were my first business lesson. And this was actually a little bit before you, Clayton. It was just Dax and Alex at that time. Yeah, it was Alex. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. These guys clearly have some clue as to what they were doing. And I took my own spin on it. I sold something slightly different, but I sold it quite honestly in a very similar, hey, Julian, what's up, Julian? And I sold it in the same goddamn manner. I bet if you went through like the, I think once upon a time I told, yeah, I was that good at it, clearly. Once upon a time, I think I did tell Alex, and I did tell Dax, certainly knew, because him and I worked later together, and he connected me again, I think, with you, Clayton, after many years. But I don't know where I was going with that. I think the important thing there is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can find other people who've done what you've done or you want to do and just check out what they're doing and try and do it in the same manner, whether it's like Ryan Deiss, for example, a phenomenal marketer, phenomenal social media marketer. And when I was building my first email marketing funnel, I had just looked at what he was doing, right? And it's important to not just copy. It's important to go a little bit deeper than that and ask some questions and try and understand what's behind the stuff that he's doing, for example. Because otherwise you're gonna miss stuff and it's gonna be hard to replicate. But yeah, don't think that you need to come up with some brand new thing. Just do what other people are doing. Maybe make your own spin on it, and maybe just do it a little bit better. See, I can't actually scroll through the comments, unfortunately, so I think I might have missed one. But Jat, what kind of business online is real work? Not mine. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it doesn't feel like real work, but I guess that's, if you enjoy it, then it's not. I think real work is well, real work is like maybe necessarily not something you really want to do. Like if you don't call it work, then it's likely something you actually want to do. It's not something, well, work is work. Work sounds unenjoyable, right? So I think what kind of business online is real work? I wouldn't know, I guess. I guess doing minutia, I mean, when I first started out, I was creating Gmail addresses. When I first started out, I was submitting to local business directories, right? And that was real work. That was tough. I remember being on vacation and I couldn't enjoy my vacation because, hey, Mike, because I was just I remember sitting on a patio and just submitting to Yelp, submitting to Super Pages, submitting to whatever. And it was a total pain in the ass. That was real work. And I missed the entire vacation as a result. So that's real work. What's not real work is finding ways to delegate. You know, it was then, shortly after then, that I met John, and him and I hooked up, and he started to take some of that work off by hand. So John is in the Philippines. Quite honestly, probably one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. Just is. He's a beast of a worker. And him and I hooked up, and he helped me take the minutia off my plate. And just like John, then, you know, once he mastered it, then he started to document it. And once he documented it, then he passed it on to somebody else, and so on and so forth. And he just keeps doing that over and over again. And now he's got a team of like 50 or 60 people in the Philippines that mainly just service. Yeah, what's up, John? That mainly just service Loganics and our other companies. Like, that's just it. It's the most amazing thing. It blows my fucking mind all the time. Anyways, I could go on about John forever. Fuck, I missed that question. My 20-year-old self. I think I would say not everything is that important. Like, it's just most stuff isn't that important. It's not that, it's just not. I think at that time you kind of treat, or at least I did, I treated everything like it was kind of life or death. You know, like if this didn't work out, if this investment, and I wasn't even in business at this time, but like, let's just say an investment in a relationship, for example, if this didn't work out, it's over, right? Like everything just seemed so important, and it just really wasn't. And I think, you know, at that time I hadn't really heard about SEO or internet marketing or any of this stuff. I was goofing around, really goofing around. You know, I guess like a typical 20-year-old, I was drinking like crazy. I probably lost a ton of brain cells in the process. I would probably just say slow the fuck down. You don't need to impress anybody. Because I think at that age, that's kind of was my mission in life, was to impress people. Because I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And so that's how I would do it. I would get totally loaded. And that brought me the confidence that I needed to get through whatever situation it might be. But so something like that. And maybe open a fucking book. Something like that. Julian's drunk right now. So cool. Well, thanks for the questions. That's awesome. And talk to John. John's fucking totally underrated entrepreneur. He always impresses me. Add that guy on Facebook. He's just awesome. You're awesome too, Julian. All right. So if no other questions, I thought I'd quickly, and feel free to jump in. I'll maybe jot the question down. All right, go for it. Go for it. Prentice Steele, who's my dad. Thank you for joining, Pop. I'll wait for your question for a moment. Actually, I'm going to come back to it because I want to start reading a couple of these things. Give you a moment to write it down. So there was this woman, Danielle. So this was at a conference on the weekend. And before I go into it, I should just really stress. I mean, one of the things I got to talking to Gary Vaynerchuk at this conference. It was called Real Talk Summit. It was put on by Man Talks. Founder of Man Talks is Connor Beaton, another phenomenal individual. He's the type of person I would sort of almost hope to be, because he's so invested in people. Like, he's so invested in lifting people up. Like, that is his mission, is to lift other human beings up. And that just blows my fucking mind that somebody could be so focused on something so amazing. So he put on Real Talk, and one of the speakers, where was I going with that? I was going to say, I for the longest time, and I sent this out on to my email newsletter. If you haven't checked that out, adamgsteele.com. There's a I don't know, like, a forum on the thing where you can sign up for the newsletter. Every week I share some thoughts. Some are important, some are unimportant, some are fun, some are more serious, some are actionable tips, things you can take right away. It varies, but one of the things I shared today was I had ignored conferences for the longest time. Meetups, conferences, masterminds, business coaches, all that stuff, podcasts for the longest time. I didn't even know they existed. And it was out of arrogance. It was out of ignorance. It was out of a lot of things like that. I remember saying on many occasions, what am I going to get out of that conference? I'm going to take the time out. I'm going to buy the expensive conference ticket. And what ROI am I going to get out of it? Am I going to get a client out of it? And, I would probably say no, I wouldn't. And those that I've been to date, I don't know that I have necessarily got a client out of it. But what I did get out of it, and what I got out of this conference, is it was just another way to learn. It was another way to connect with other human beings. And I don't do that enough. I just don't. I don't know why. I think it's partly because I work from home, and you can kind of get used to that. You can get used to just being a bit of a hermit. And I don't excel in public situations, like in a room, like it's just a small meetup, 20 people. Like, I would be that dude on his phone ignoring everybody. Not because I want to ignore everybody, but I just don't know how to approach that situation properly. And this conference was different. And what made it especially different was I spent a little bit more money on my ticket. And what I found is, instead of meeting that barricade, that obstacle of trying to find my way into another person's conversation or another group's conversation, I remember seeing people reaching out to those people on their phone, looking around, trying to find a way to get in, them reaching out and bringing them into the conversation, being like, tell me about yourself. And they would say this amazing thing. They would say, how can I support you? What can I do to support you? What can I do to make your personal life or business life better? It's an amazing question. An amazing question. Amazing question that would have amazing feedback if more people asked it. And it just made all the difference. And I think I think in part that had to do with folks being a bit more invested. Like it seemed like because people had paid a little bit more for a ticket, they were that much more committed to getting something out of it. They had more skin in the game, essentially. So if you go to a conference, when you go to your next conference, spend a little bit more money on the ticket and just see the difference, especially if you've already had the experience of going to a conference and haven't done the VIP or whatever that ticket may be. Check out the difference. I think you'll find that you will leave with a hell of a lot more than you normally do, because it's just, people are just so much more invested in getting something. So, so I'll go on to this in just a second. What is your method of creating new empowering habits, and how, I can't read today, that you hope will replace an old, ingrained, unsatisfying one? Usually when I try to break a habit, or I try to create a new habit, for example, is I try to make it more manageable. Like I tend to have one speed, and that's like full speed. Like a perfect example, I haven't been going to the gym lately. If I were to start going again, I would go 5 times a week. And I would get exhausted. I would get sick. Most likely, it almost happens every single time. I get super sick, and then I'm out of the gym for a week, and then it's over. So instead of, and same thing with reading, for example, like instead of going to the gym 5 times a week, if you haven't been in a while, go 1 time a week. Heck, go 1 time a month. That might be a little bit too little, but 1 time every 2 weeks. I don't know. Just like break things up into more manageable chunks and just do that for a little while. Do a month at 1 time per week and see how that feels. And it's important it feels good, right? Because you're not going to be excited about continuing to do it if you're not getting something out of it. So start small. Break up whatever it is you want to accomplish, or whatever it is you hope to do, into small bite-sized chunks, and see how that goes. And then after a month, add a second day. So on week 6, add a second day to it. Do that for a month. And eventually it should, hopefully, at least in my experience, become a constant. But again, it has, I don't know how to force yourself. I don't know how to force myself to do something I fucking hate, that I don't believe in, that I don't get value in. I don't know. I don't know if there's a trick to that. Maybe there is, but it doesn't sound very enjoyable. So I would have a good hard look at whatever it is you're trying to replace, or whatever habit you're trying to pick up. And if you don't know why it's important for you, maybe spend some time asking yourself why it's important to you. Kind of break that down, create sort of maybe like a vision statement kind of thing, and then have a look at that each day. Sometimes it's not always clear, but if you can make yourself have a look at why it's important, like why that particular thing has meaning. Like they do it I remember reading in the Marines, in basic training, what they do is they will ask their recruits why they're doing something. Why is it important? And, you know, maybe you say, well, I want to provide a better life for my my daughter and wife, or something like that. And so they ask them to remember that next time they're cold and they're marching through the mud and they're just doing total crap, to remember that and to associate that meaning with whatever it is that they're doing. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of the way that I would go about it. Thanks for the comment, Colby. What do we got here? Colby, if you left a comment and you're watching this, I didn't see it. You'd have to leave it on the actual like live video versus the video that I shared, if that makes any freaking sense. So would love your question if you're still around. So back to the conference. Her name's Danielle something. I can't remember. I can maybe search it real quick. She was a very intelligent lady. I really enjoyed her talk. Danielle, here it is. Laporte. So she is an author, among other things. And so she had some tips, and I'll just read them to you. You won't get published unless you have a big social following. So if you're approaching a publisher, it seems to her that the prerequisite for them to kind of look at you or pay attention to you, or one way that you can kind of get to the top of the pile, and there are big fucking piles that these publishers go through, I'm told. One way that you can kind of get to the top or get extra interest is if you have a big social following, because it seems like to her, again, this is not from experience, it seems to her that they want you to do the marketing. They want you to market your own book. They don't want to do all the marketing for you. They want you to be your own, biggest advocate. So I think they threw around the number 100,000 followers, but I don't know that I would focus necessarily on that number unless that's what they're focusing on. I would focus on engagement. So I would focus on how active, because you could have 100,000 followers quite quickly, and no one engages with you. Well, there's no value to that, right? There's no value. No one's going to buy your book if nobody's engaging with you or nobody gives a shit about you. So I think, as Gary says, he focuses on depth, not width. So the depth of the relationship versus the width of the relationships, if that makes sense. I don't know that this was necessarily from her. This might have been somebody else at this point, but they said, if you want to go deep, you have to do it one at a time. And I think this is with regards to social. And it got me thinking about how I engage with my quote unquote audience and how I'm going to go about doing it in the future. And I think if I was to kind of do it again and start at one follower, I think as people liked my page or followed whatever social account it was, I would DM them like I would spend a little bit of time. And I don't know how the fuck I would scale this, but I am always trying to scale the unscalable. I would have a look at what that person is about. What is it that they're trying to do? Just look them up, look at their Twitter profile, whatever it might be. And see how you might be able to help them, and send them a customized comment, like a DM or whatever, where possible. I know different social profiles don't allow certain things, but send them a comment. Just say, hey, I noticed that you're working on this. Is there anything I can help you with? Or send them a tip, or send them a link to something that might be helpful, right? And I'm thinking about how I'm going about things now, and I think that might be useful. For now on, maybe on a weekly basis, I will pick a handful of people that like my page, and I'll just go to their respective pages and learn a little bit, what I can learn about them, and offer some help. See perhaps how I can support them. A little lesson from my friend Connor Beaton. So I really liked that. If you want to go deep, you have to do it one at a time. One of the things she said is kindness is the most powerful thing we can do. I like that as well. And I guess that kind of relates to what I was talking about. And then she started talking about tools. Hire a business and life coach. I've never thought about this. I don't think that I necessarily want a life coach. I think that sounds kind of foo-foo. I don't know. Who knows who knows everything about life that they can be a life coach? I don't know. That doesn't That doesn't make sense to me. And that could be my own ignorance and my own misunderstanding. If somebody knows different, please tell me. I'd love to learn more about it. But I'm noticing that I'm looking at some of the life coaches that were in the room at this conference and the ones that I've seen in the past, and they're all like 25 years old. Like I was talking to one the other day and he was like 23 years old and a life coach. The fuck would he have to teach me? I don't know. Again, maybe I'm missing something. I could see it. I would get it, I think, if like it was someone who's, you know, let's say well into their 40s, 50s, 60s, something like that, and they've been around the block. Like they've had lots of experience, not just business experiences, but lots of personal experiences. A couple failed marriages. I don't know. Something of, they've just been through some shit. I would like to learn from them. Like that I get. So I don't know. Someone with business coaches and life coaches themselves, perhaps. I noticed that was quite common among folks who talked about business coaching and life coaching. So in any event, I have sought out a business coach now. And it's interesting. I was told to look for somebody. This was from one of the speakers on the weekend. I was told to look for, he said, look for somebody who is where you want to be or has been where you want to be professionally and personally. So a real sort of well-rounded individual. If you're interested about that, let me know, because I've got a ton of notes somewhere else that I can share with you. I've been really researching it. The idea behind a business coach, I think, is one, it's certainly someone to help you wade through some of the more complex stuff that you just haven't learned. Like I'm still figuring out cash flow, for example. I could use some help there. I'm still learning about customer value and average customer value and all these different metrics that I'm really only kind of hearing about now. And just little things like that, you know, some of these other folks may have been through, and they could, you know, walk me through it a little bit. It's accelerated learning, really. And I think more than anything, it's for accountability, to have somebody to be accountable to, someone you respect, someone you would feel disappointed if you disappointed them, if you didn't meet whatever target. So I think that's valuable. Let's see, talked about visioning. So creating like vision boards and things like that, where you want to be. Remember I talked about that question earlier on. Where do you see your business in 1 year, in 5 years? Like map that out. What does that look like? I remember poweredbysearch.com. They have a vision statement or a vision board or a vision something. I think if you scroll down to their footer, so the bottom of their website, there's something there. Dev and Matt and the rest of his team, Julie, I think as well, did a fabulous job of that. I'm just in awe of what they did there. And it's good to have something to look at, something to remind you of where you're headed. I just cleared my whiteboard, but I'm thinking of putting like a vision statement like right there, so it's in my face and I can remember what it is that I'm heading towards. Because when you look at some of the things that you do each day, it's important to ask yourself, how does this contribute? How does this contribute to the bigger picture? How does this contribute to my goal this year? And if it doesn't, then you really shouldn't be doing it. What else? Talked about the Pomodoro timer. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Pomodoro. Has anybody heard of the Pomodoro technique? Little Apple timer. You wind up for, say, 20 minutes, a single Pomodoro. Basically, it's a tool that folks use to kind of stay focused. It's it doesn't have to be an Apple timer. It can be a phone timer, although I kind of like an Apple timer personally, that you wind up, put it on your desk, and you are to do 20 minutes of concentrated work. And for whatever reason, this tick, 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 it keeps you focused. It keeps you from doing other things. You are somehow strangely accountable to this stupid plastic toy. And then you take 5 minutes and you go lie on the couch, close your eyes, or you look out the window for 5 minutes, and then you do another 20 minutes. And it's strange. I don't know what it is about it, but it just works. And so then you start measuring, work in Pomodoros. So you might say, as you're planning your day, these are the things that you want to get done. And you might say, well, this is 2 Pomodoros. This is 1 Pomodoro. This is 3 Pomodoros. This is 4 Pomodoros, 1 Pomodoro, half a Pomodoro, whatever. Put it into priority. Put your items into priority. And you'll get a pretty realistic idea of what you can actually accomplish in a day. And then you can actually set a realistic goal instead of finishing your day not focused, finishing your day and feeling disappointed because you didn't get as much done as you want. But you can plan your day so you know exactly what you're going to get done by the end of the day by using this Pomodoro technique. Plus, you're going to get it done faster because you're focused. So check that out. Check out the Pomodoro technique. There's a book that I read once. I don't know that it was I think it might have been an audio book actually, but look into that. Talked a lot about wellness, about sleeping right, about eating right, and about moving. It said sleep, eat, move, and it put a lot of stock into each one of those things. I certainly don't do enough of any of those, and I'm sure I would benefit from it, but it is what it is. I set a goal for myself while I was there. I said next year, and don't tell Connor yet, because I gotta go talk to him myself. But next year, I want to be on that panel. I want to be on that stage next year. I want to be sharing my experience. So that's one goal that I set for myself. What else? Has anybody heard of Entrepreneurs Organization, EO? I'm more and more hearing about folks that are, it's kind of like BNI, I think, but I don't know, it's different. It's different than BNI. I'm going to check that out. What else do I have here? There was this one statement that this fellow, I think it was Jean-Pierre, he owns Sage Wellness Centers. And this guy's it's fucking crazy. This guy's hiring 20 people a week right now. It's intense. He says raising up other human beings is a duty and an honor. I liked that. What else do I have here? I didn't highlight things. I'm reading out of this. We have this little notebook. So this was what I was writing things down in. Another thing I wrote down. I haven't really thought about these things necessarily, but I wrote them down because I was like, wow, that means something to me. I don't know what it is, but I want to get back to that. Impact is the byproduct of our responsibility fulfilled. I wrote down some statistics. This is really interesting. Say 30% of entrepreneurs are depressed. So that was some stats that were shared, and they say 4%, so like 4% of just everybody, entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, are depressed. So 30% of entrepreneurs are depressed, and 4% of people in general are depressed. So that's like 1 in 4 entrepreneurs are depressed. More than 1 in 4 entrepreneurs are depressed. That's kind of interesting. Which I think is, remember we talked about how can I support you? I think when you know that more than 25%, when 30% of entrepreneurs are depressed, that question is just that much more meaningful. It means that much more, and it might mean that much more to the person that you're asking. I got some rough notes here. Invest in connection, save those connections, spend those connections. So invest in those in the connections, invest in people. Essentially, this has to do a little bit with Apple's motto. At Apple, our most important resource is our soul, which is our people, give or take. I would have done well to prepare. There's another statement. A lot of these are statements. It's just things people said that I just thought, wow. To make $1 billion, serve 1 billion people. I don't know who said that. No, that's not who said it. Yeah, I've got more of these. Find something you're willing to die for and go live. Or go live it. I like that. What else do I have? Talked about Lady Gaga and how she kind of gave her audience a name. You know, she calls them little monsters. And how she's basically created a community, this very unique community that if you look at other other bands or other artists, they don't have the same sort of devout fan base that she has. And it started apparently with calling them little monsters. And I think it's her approach too. They were talking about, you know, at our concerts, they're not templated at all. They're very sort of off the cuff. Like, I think one girl said something to her while she was on stage, and she just, like, I guess it was something profound, and then she just, you know, went over to her piano and sung that girl a song based on what that girl had told her. Remember we talked about, what did I say? I think that's a perfect example of something I said. If you want to go deep, do it one at a time. It's a perfect fucking example. And she doesn't need to do that, right? Okay, and so these are the notes and they're just notes. That's all they are. So you'll have to decipher them yourself. But these are all of the notes that I collected while listening to Gary Vaynerchuk speak. So I'll run through these, and then we'll talk about a little bit of some of the things that I've been working on, some of the things that I've learned and taken action on and how that's worked out. And then we'll finish up. So let me run through these. And some of them might make sense, some of them might not, because I wrote them down in a hurry. Your intent must be pure. You must be proud of it. Convince those that matter, not the other 90%. Focus on the foundation. Don't spend the foundation. So I can definitely share a good example on that one. When you're starting your business, you shouldn't be spending anything. Like anything. Everything should be reinvested into the business. You should be eating ramen noodles. Should not be, you know, buying nice shoes or things like that. I remember he pointed to, here's this girl, it was hilarious. This girl was telling him, like, you know, she wants to be, you know, be an entrepreneur. She wants to start her business, but she's having trouble financing it. She's having trouble getting it off the ground. She's got a few customers, but she doesn't have enough money to go full time to make that big jump. And he's like, look at your fucking shoes. And they're like these $1,000 Valentinos. He's like, spend less on those and you'll be able to go full time. I thought that was funny. What else do we have here? I don't know that I can read my writing here, but I'm going to go for it anyways. Map towards not the... I don't know what the fuck I wrote there. Never mind. You have the audacity, but you're not willing to do the work. So you have the audacity to want
to make $1 million a year, but you're not willing to do the work. If you don't know how to produce written word, audio, video, or Jesus, I should write. Basically, what he's saying is if you don't have the ability to produce written word, audio, video, or using your phone, you're fucked, because that's where things are going. Long form posts to Facebook and Medium. So he's talking about how, for him anyways, he's seeing a lot of results from long form posts, which is basically posting like big posts to Facebook or to medium.com, for example, instead of your blog. And I think if you can do both, blog and Facebook, the better. But if you can only do one and you don't have an audience yet, do it on Facebook. And I think you'll see a hell of a lot more. I think what he's getting at is you'll see a lot more traction there because one, you've already got an audience, your friends. And two, right now, Facebook is treating that long form content really sort of favorably. They're helping it kind of get seen. So I thought that was interesting and something I'm going to play with. He said something funny, folded like a cheap chair. I like that saying. He talked about documenting, not creating. So if you don't necessarily have a lot to say, like a lot of people they want to do, they want to create content, but they don't necessarily have something to say or to create. Instead, what he suggests is to document whatever it is you're doing, which is kind of like what we're doing right here. What we're doing with our YouTube show is we're kind of documenting what I'm learning, grabbing action items from that, taking those action items, putting them to work, and then telling you guys how it worked. And I mean, kind of selfishly, it's going to hopefully serve as something to look back on, years from now. But yeah, document, don't create. What else did he say? He talks a lot about speed, which I think is to basically say, don't worry about everything being perfect. That last, 5%, 10% that it would take to get whatever it is you're working on to be perfect just isn't that important. It's just not that critical. So just value speed over accuracy, essentially. Just get it out there. You can always improve it going forward, but analysis paralysis, not putting it out there, is not going to help you. I really liked this. Another one of those just sort of sayings. Dedicated to my business and devoted to my family. I loved that. Let's see. Said to study Charity Water and what they did very early on. So that's what's a charity? That's kind of it. A lot of the stuff that he talked about, I'd already kind of heard before because I watch his show. Like he talks about a lot of the same stuff, so it wasn't anything super new. But it was just kind of exciting to see in that format, I suppose. When I got to talk to him, one of the things that he said, and just to sort of rehash this a little bit, is everybody learns differently. Books may not be your cup of tea, and so maybe it's not important that you read books right now. But find something. It can be anything. It can be podcasts, perhaps. If you've never listened to a podcast, perhaps start with something fun and fictional. There's one that was really popular and probably still is, called Serial. It was, I think, the first podcast I ever listened to, and it was super entertaining. I couldn't get enough of it. And that led to another one after that. I don't remember what it was. It was probably like This American Life, or it might have been Startup. Startup is another good podcast, which probably led me to another and another. And eventually I found Tim Ferriss's podcast, which led me to the Jocko podcast, which led me to the Joe Rogan show, which led me to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History and Dan Carlin's Common Sense, which led me to there's one, the Vancouver Reel, which I had the good fortune of being interviewed on just the other day. That's a good one. There's the Man Talks podcast. There's a good one. So just start. It doesn't really matter what you start with or how you engage in self-development, how you invest in yourself. It just matters that you do, essentially. Conferences are a good way to go. Meetups are a good way to go. Most cities have meetups regularly. If you go to meetup or meetups, I think it's meetup.com, and just search your city, find all kinds of meetups, some really strange ones too. But I know there are some internet marketing ones in town here. There are some entrepreneurial ones here in town. And for the longest time, I ignored those, and shame on me. I would have been meeting a lot of really cool people. What else? I actually wrote down a few things. I think this is valuable, so I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on it. Episode 30. I have my computer in front of me, if you hadn't guessed. So let's see here. Yeah, I think that's it. There's also something called a mastermind, which is kind of like sort of a self-interested group of people. Like they're interested in kind of furthering each other's development. And it might be in business, it might be in people's personal life, it may be in a lot of things. There's all kinds of masterminds. And the one that I'm looking into right now is essentially a group of business owners of different types. I think it's, I'm looking at trying to find a group that isn't sort of all at my level. So I'm hoping to find one where I'm maybe not the dumbest person in the room, but maybe not super far from it. I think that way I'll get a hell of a lot more out of it. I'm looking for one that has a pretty strict process for allowing people in and not allowing people in. One that has accountability partners, which is basically like you get a partner in the group and you guys share each other's business goals, and then you break down those business goals into small business goals, and then you hold each other accountable to them. So you meet, and this is another important thing. It's important that the mastermind, the group of people, meets on a regular basis, like monthly would be ideal, I think. And so you're accountable to that person. So I think that it's hard to be accountable to anybody when you're a business owner. You only have yourself, and that's pretty tricky. So I've been looking at that. And I think the last thing that I'll kind of leave I'll finish up with, as we're getting to 6:30 now, is I really want to drive home the point of focus. I remember an email exchange between myself and a buddy, Dev Basu, and I remember sort of it ending with, well, maybe you're just like, what's his name? Dev said to me, maybe you're just like, God damn it. 1 second. There it is, Richard Branson. And you can run that many companies. What he meant to say is, smarten up. You're not like Richard Branson. You can't run that many companies. At least you can't run that many well. And And so this year, I started by figuring out which companies were going to be important, which products were going to be important, and perhaps more importantly than anything, what am I doing each day that isn't important? What can I eliminate? And it's through the process of auditing. I've talked about this a little bit before, but auditing what it is that I'm doing on a daily basis by using a time tracker for, say, 30 days, by auditing what it is I'm doing, eliminating what I shouldn't be doing, automating what I can eliminate. So using tools like Zapier, if this, then that, or natural sort of software integration. So using software, period. So there's lots of software out there that solves half of the problems for us, and we don't even realize it because we're so used to having, browser-based software. We're super spoiled. And then finally, what can't be automated should be delegated. If you aren't uniquely qualified, if this isn't something you and you alone can do, and most shit isn't, then it should be delegated. And it can be delegated very easily. You can find a virtual assistant locally or abroad. There are lots of sites where websites where you can find folks to work for $5, $6, $7, $8, $10 an hour to do your minutia. So you can focus on what you're uniquely good at. And it's through that process this year that we've, I don't know, I don't know the exact numbers, but we have probably doubled our business since December, which is fucking significant. And it's going to continue to climb because I'm trying to sort of get others to think this way too. So the others that are working with me I'm trying to figure out what they're uniquely good at and get them to focus on what is going to make the largest contribution to themselves, to the organization, to their family. And through that, we're going to continue growing like crazy. That's been the biggest game changer of the year, is just focus. If I had only listened to Dev Basu a year ago when we had that email exchange, who knows where I'd be now, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that I did figure it out. And so as a final note, and like I said, I'll be available. I'll check in on the comments if I missed any, and I'm super, super stoked to get more if anybody has more. Book number 1. Read it. Book number 2, read it. Checklist Manifesto. Actually, let's make this book number 1, The 4-Hour Workweek. Rework. You can make that book number 3 or 4, I think. I'm missing one. I think I gave it away. This would be a good one too. Meetings Suck. I'm just pulling out all the ones that made a big difference this year. Another one. Eat That Frog. Now, books, and it may not be the way for you. These are all on audiobooks. So maybe audiobook's the way for you. Maybe the web is the way to go. Tim Ferriss has lots of his material online. You do not need this book. And if that doesn't work, well, fuck, I don't know what to suggest. You can always ask me, and I will jump on a call with you, and I'll very happily suggest something. I'll figure it out. That's it. That's it for tonight. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the attention. Thank you for your time. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you for the questions. I loved answering the questions. I'd love to do that more often, actually. Next week, I don't know what I'm going to read. I really, like I said, I don't want to read anything that doesn't like help me now. Yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out. So until then, thank you again. Yeah, I'll see you next week, Wednesday, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we'll meet back here. And if you have, like I said, if you have any other questions, you let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them as best as I can. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.